So here we are, wonderful Wednesday nights. My name is David Whipham with Work in Progress, Texas, personal trainer and nutrition coach. Tonight, we want to talk a little bit about the necessity of proper programming for any of your fitness goals, and for that matter, health and body composition goals. There's a lot of floating around you see with marketing and whatnot today, where you have all these DVDs or you have online access to various companies out there. I kind of won't name drop any of these, but there's a tendency here that you find where people just kind of randomly choose some of these workouts rather than sticking with a solid base program. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit, why your programming of your workouts really matters. So you'll see this a lot in a gym. You'll see people who are they walk into a gym, and many gyms, they're just kind of overwhelming. If you're one of those after work workout people, now the gym is packed full of people, even more overwhelming. But they have no plan. And they just kind of say like, well, today I feel like doing legs, or today I just feel like doing my upper body, or maybe I'll just do arms, or maybe I'll just do this. Well, the long and short of that is your body just really is not going to respond well over time with that, because you're randomly grabbing at straws here. And the same thing really goes for if you talk about, I will throw Beachbody in there. There's all these cool 30-minute, do this in 30 minutes, do that in 30 minutes, do this. And then people have a tendency just to pick the one they feel like doing that day because that's their favorite and that's how fun it is. Well, if you have some very targeted goals on what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in your physique, in your health, which most of us here who are, over 40, as I'm talking out to our Facebook group, Fat Loss Secrets for Busy Professionals, we're all kind of in this age group. We're aging, we're trying to really combat that. Well, what's the best way to combat it? Muscle mass. Muscle mass is your fountain of youth. And the way you can really get there, the way you can really make progress, is through real proper programming. Now, what does proper programming mean? Proper programming means your exercises are actually configured in a very specific order. Now, there's a reason for this. The order matters because of how you want to stimulate muscle. So the best way, and it's always the best way, I will stick with this till the day I die, is compound lifts are the absolute best way to improve your strength, your muscle mass, your composition, and even some mobility. Why is that? Well, you're talking about compound movements. You're talking about a squat. So you will see your ankles will flex, your knees will flex, your hips will flex, and then you have to extend them back up to the top of the movement. Where if you compare a squat to, let's say, a leg extension where you're sitting down and you're just raising your ankles and straightening your legs out. So with the squat, you're using well over 120-ish muscles to do a proper squat. So your core is engaged, your shoulders, your back, your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, and even the musculature in your feet to keep you stable. Whereas with a leg extension, you're really just focused on your quads. That's really all it's gonna what we call isolate. It's called an isolation movement. Single joint, kind of single set of muscle groups. So compound movements, they always need to be at the beginning of your workout. They're most taxing because of all the musculature. Bench press is going to include your pectoral muscles, your core, your shoulders, and your triceps. So if you go ahead and you do, let's say, a chest fly first, which is an isolated exercise that really just works your chest because you're just doing that fly movement, and that's the biggest range of motion for your chest. And then you go and try and do your bench press later, guess what's going to happen? You're actually going to gas out. Your triceps will end up taking over. And now you're not getting that maximum amount of recruitment for an amazing exercise. So if your programming is kind of all over the place, you're randomly doing things, you walk into a gym, you're like, well, the squat rack's busy. Okay. So maybe move on to the bench press, or maybe move on to another compound movement, overhead shoulder press, or any of these compound movements. But if you go to these isolation movements, like bicep curls, start out your workout off with bicep curls, but then you want to do some lat pull downs, or you want to do bent over rows. You're not going to be able to lift as much, all because your biceps are an accessory muscle to these bigger movements. Anytime you pull, your biceps are involved as a stabilizer, as a secondary muscle group. Well, if you gas them out first, how do you think you're going to do on a compound movement? Any compound pulling movement, you will not be able to move as much weight. You'll drastically reduce the intensity, which will drastically reduce any type of progress you can make on your body. Also with programming, for me to look at some of our clients, I like watch people's movement patterns, whether it's a video, whether I see these folks in person. I get to see how your body moves. What is your shoulder flexibility like? What is your thoracic spine flexibility like? Your hips, your knees, your ankles, all of this stuff matters to get you to the biggest gains you can. So if you have a movement pattern issue, one of the common ones actually is when people squat, their knees tend to kind of collapse in, because that just means their hips are a little bit weak. Well, if you go to a gym and you're just hammering away at squats, which is great, you're getting the movement in. The issue is that you're probably going to exacerbate the problem of poor movement pattern. So get someone to properly program you. We strengthen those hips first. We improve the shoulder mobility, or we improve thoracic spine mobility, or your hip mobility, any of those. Then we can move on to the proper programming, because we know we fixed your movement patterns and we strengthened you in the appropriate places. Because no matter which way you dial this, it's always about maximizing your time in the gym, because time is valuable to all of us, and maximizing the result you get from that. The third point of programming, most people, unless you're a trainer or you've been lifting for a very long time, do not understand how to manipulate what we would call progressive overload. So you always want to progressively overload your body. There's different ways to do this. You can add more sets, you can add more weight, you can decrease your rest times, all these things. Well, isn't it a lot easier to have this set program in front of you that tells you exactly how and when you're going to do this? It takes all the guesswork out of it. Now, I'm not going to say that real appropriate programming, especially with resistance training, is fun. It's not this, hey, let's jump around and everyone's got perfect teeth and, tanned bodies and whatnot, and they're jumping for joy and having a good time. No, it's not like that at all. Actually, proper weight training to most people is probably fairly boring. It's going to be a lot of the same movements, the same exercises. Yeah, and multiple planes at some point, which, going to the side, going backwards, things like that. It's what we call multiplanar movement. But it's not as glorious as a lot of this marketing tends to be. And it gets people into this weird space. You go into this gym and there's all these shiny, fancy looking machines with levers and gears and chains and weights you can put on them, weights you can take off, and all this stuff. And honestly, you don't need all of it to make great, amazing gains. And people get wrapped up in that sometimes. They want to play with a funny leg extension machine or the leg curls, or any of the fancy machines you see. I'm not saying they don't have benefits, they do. But I can tell you, anyone that's going to listen to this or listening to me now, you probably don't have the desire to be a bodybuilder, where you're really going to throw in such high volume. You're going to hit your chest muscles from 7 different angles in a single workout, and 2.5 hours later, you're finally leaving the gym. For most of us, what do we want? We want to lose this. We want to put some on here all around. Ladies, you like to see a little tricep, maybe a little shoulder, nice trim waist, some good looking legs. You can do all that with the basics if it's programmed correctly. Now you'll see there's a lot of different methods you see people out there with a 30-second rest, a minute and a half rest, minute rest. All of those belong in the programming. But again, it depends on where you put it. If I had my way with every single client and they had access and they had the skill set, I would start everyone in strength training. You would literally be doing 3 to 5 reps, extremely heavy weight. After we did like a pre-phase thing, caveat to that, little pre-phase first, get you used to the movements, but then you'd sit there for 3 to 5 minutes resting, because that's how your energy gets restored to go through that next set. And I may have you do 3 to 5 sets of that. You'll get strong very quickly. You'll be very stable. And that allows us to move on to a next phase, which we start building muscle. So, and then eventually move you to maybe to an endurance phase. And we work you through these rep ranges from 3 to 5 reps to 15 to 20 reps to 10 to 12 reps, 8 to 10, 6 to 8. All of these are important. But 90% of the people who are trying to do this on their own have no idea how to do that without following a program. There are some great programs out there. I do write my own, but I come from the same school as, if you ever look at Mind Pump Media, those guys are absolutely fantastic. They get this. They really stick with the basics 90% of the time until you get to their programs that are very bodybuilder specific. You're going to do 2 a days. You know, you're lifting twice a day, like 2.5+ hours. But most of you just want to get some time in, and we want to be efficient with our time. Programming does that for you. Now, if you don't do this stuff, and this is what happens, I see it with a client or two that I'm not doing their program or doing their nutrition, but I see the workouts that they're doing, and there's just like this laundry list of exercises. And to be truthful, it's not necessary. If you do the right exercises in the right order, it really should be no more than 12 exercises overall. Honestly, as far as the resistance part of everything, without a warm up and cool down, it's really only going to be about 8. 8 exercises done in the right order with the right level of resistance, and 3 to 4 week phases of changing it over time and different ways manipulating it, plus your nutrition. Let's not discount nutrition. That's 85% of this whole equation. You'll just see amazing gains. Now, people tend to ask, like in a gym especially, like, well, what if this is busy? What if that's busy? You always just want to do your best in a gym for compound movements first, multi-joint movements. There is, and people who see me speak before, we'll talk about the big 5. We'll talk about the squat, deadlifts, bench press, overhead press, barbell row. Those 5 barbell movements, if you manipulate them correctly over time through the course of programming, you will make incredible gains. You'll be strong. You'll pack on muscle if your diet's right for packing on muscle. And you'll make progress. And you can keep switching that around over and over again. Now, there's a point where you may want to be functional, which if you look at, not a huge fan of CrossFit, but that's more of like a functional type of workouts where it's stuff you do every day. We squat almost every day somehow. You know, we lunge, we reach, you know, all of those 5 moves will cover all of that. But eventually you might want to move to some multi-plane movements, side lunges, reverse lunges, things like that. So that's kind of the skinny on all of it. It's really a matter of that proper programming is going to do wonders for you. You know, whether you find that at a really good, reputable online service like Mind Pump Media, I will recommend their products all day. And if anyone wants, I do have links. We are affiliated with Mind Pump. We talk to those guys probably once a year at certain events. So they're fantastic. For my own clients, obviously, I do program for them as well. And I'm willing to program for others who might be interested. But it's key. It is absolutely key. You can't jump from one thing to the next and really expect to make results. Your body enjoys the stimulus and you'll burn calories for sure. But if you're not really calculated about it, you're not going to put enough stimulus on those muscle groups to see improvement. So I also had a question that came in our Facebook group, which was cardio and cardio in relation with hormones and nutrition and weightlifting and everything kind of all together. So cardio, is there such thing as too much cardio? Unless you're an endurance athlete, absolutely. Because in the long run, what are we truly concerned about? And take this one to the grave with you. It's not about burning calories during exercise. It's about burning calories when you're doing nothing. And how do you do that? You do it with muscle mass. When you lift weights, that session ends. You have now increased your metabolism anywhere from 30 to 60 something percent for the next 48 to 72 hours. So your body is burning more calories throughout those post-workout hours than any cardio exercise will ever do. Cardio is burning calories in the now, not the later. Burning calories after workouts should always be your goal. Cardio has benefits, that being said, but you can walk, you can ride a bike, you don't have to kill yourself. You know, for fat loss, hit workouts all the way, hit workouts with weights, even better. But long drawn out 5-mile runs, huffing and puffing, you can't breathe, you can't talk, your face is all red. All you're doing is burning calories in the now. So who wouldn't want to work out for 45 minutes with proper, what we call RPE, which is a perceived exertion on your body between an 8 and a 10. So the last 2 reps of every set you're going to do should be fairly difficult. Like the last one should be on the edge of losing form. Never lose form, but it should be on the edge. So working hard at each of those reps is paramount. If you can zip through 12 reps, it's not heavy enough. But if you hit rep number 10 and you're like, okay, I can squeeze out 2 more and keep my form, that is the right amount of weight. As soon as it becomes easy to get to 12, it's time to up the weight. It's honestly kind of simple as that. But that's pretty much what it all comes down to. The other part of this question was, you know, if you really want to make gains, cortisol and too much cardio, again, this is someone talking who's over 40 and female. Again, cardio affects cortisol levels. So cortisol is a hormone that's been kind of demonized in a lot of ways. And I'll get into that in a second. But post-exercise, your cortisol level is always up. Okay. So don't work out an hour or 2 before bedtime. And here's why. So cortisol is your wake-up hormone. So when you start to wake up in the morning, your cortisol levels rise, right? So your cortisol level rises, best to get sunshine first thing in the morning because that kind of triggers it to a nice flow process. You've heard of circadian rhythm, I'm sure. And then it depletes through the course of the day. Well, if you're depleting through the course of the day as the sun sets, aka circadian rhythm, and you work out and your body wants the sun to be going down, decreasing your cortisol, now you kind of spiked it again. So now you're going to delay melatonin onset and whatnot. So back off there. Cortisol is also the stress hormone, which is why it responds to exercise. So you exercise, you put stress on your body, but it'll dip an hour or so after it'll start anyway. So be cognizant of that, but I would not worry about cortisol in cardio or cortisol in lifting weights. It's a natural response. It's just when you actually are incorporating your exercise. I do have another question here. So Jen, reps versus upping the weight. So here's how the rep ranges work. If you're going 1 rep to 5 or 6 reps, that's pure strength training. That trains very specific muscle fibers. They're kind of called fast twitch muscle fibers. I could get into really nerdy details about it. But the further you get up past 12 reps, there's benefits for sure, but the stress becomes a different stress. The stress turns to more of an endurance type stress, what we would call increasing your lactic acid threshold. So you start to feel that burn, feel the burn, feel the burn. Well, that's lactic acid building up in your musculature. So that you can, upping your reps is beneficial for sure, but overall upping your weight or slowing down your reps is actually a better idea. So let's say you only have dumbbells up to 30 pounds. Well, you can bench press that 30 pounds 15 times, but you really want to try and stay in the 10 to 12 rep range. Well, what you do is you slow that set, each of those reps way down. And I will promise you, I could do it like 3 seconds down from the top of the bench press and 3 seconds back up with 30 pounds. And I would be gassed out, guaranteed, at 10 reps. And I can lift far more than that. And that's how you can kind of manipulate it. If you run out of weight, yeah, you could go for more reps. More reps would be less rest. And you're still not going to maximize that really tearing into the muscle tissue like you want to. So you're better off slowing reps down if you don't have more weight. But I would always suggest adding more weight. There's nothing wrong with ever getting stronger. That brings up another point. Some people have body parts that respond very quickly to exercise. For me, my traps, I like practically lose my neck if I really work them hard, right? But if I'm only doing 2 or 3 sets and it's kind of a mediocre rep range, I think calves was another example for some people. Generally, unless you're really focused on that hypertrophy and adding tons of weight to them and really working them hard, you really shouldn't grow a lot of muscle tissue. And the other piece of that is muscle growth, unless you're an absolute newbie, depends on how much you're eating. So to really put muscle on, you need to eat above your maintenance. So for me, it's like, well, I don't know, 3,100 calories, and I can put on more muscle. The average female is probably somewhere between 2,600 and 2,800 calories at an average weight of, let's say, 150. You actually have to eat quite a lot of food to add more muscle. But that's a great idea to add more muscle. It really just comes down to your programming. And if you have someone programming, which I know people do, that are watching this, as long as you stick to it, and as long as when you get stuck on your programming, whoever's doing your programming or whoever maybe you purchased it from, reach out to them and say, I'm kind of stuck, I don't know where to go. A lot of these programs, Jim Stepani, Mind Pump Me, are probably the two groups I trust the most. Squat University is pretty good too. But they have forums all over the place. Go into their forum and ask them, like, here's where I'm struggling. Here's where I can't get any further. I don't know what to do from this point on. But it's all about working through the different rep ranges all the way through and timing it with your nutrition. If you marry the two together. So if you're in a calorie deficit, it's all about maintaining the muscle. You just don't want to burn the muscle off because you're eating far less calories than your body requires. So that's great. 2 or 3 days a week, full body workouts, maybe throw in some mobility and some really light cardio. And by that, I'm talking about walking. Now, to really hit the deficit hard, you go into the next phase of it. You do some HIIT workouts 2 or 3 days a week, very short, as hard as you possibly can go for that 10 to 15 seconds, as hard as you can go. It's what a lot of people don't understand about HIIT workouts. It's as all out effort. 20-minute workout, done deal. You will burn tons of calories for the next 24 hours to 32 hours. As comparison to running for an hour and a half, gassed out of your mind, and all you really did was burn some carbs and calories. So that kind of wraps it all up. I know it's kind of a lot of information, but programming is paramount to your success. If you're going to follow some of these packaged, I don't know, DVDs or online stuff, and they have a program available, it's not all this, oh, build muscle and cardio at the same time. There's no such thing. There is no such thing. Follow that program, right? So whether it's, I don't know, Beach Stride's got one called Lift 4, or I guess there's a new one, Lift More, whatever catchphrase you're using, follow it to the letter and see how it goes. But if you're huffing and puffing during that whole workout, you're just doing cardio. That's, straight there. I mean, I do a workout for 45 minutes. I burn 250 calories. I weigh 210 pounds. So I'm not burning a lot of calories in 45 minutes. That's not the goal. It's burning my calories after. So thank you all for joining and listening to it. If you're listening to this after, again, my name is David Witham from Work in Progress, Texas, nutrition coaching and personal training, talking to our fat loss secrets for busy professionals group here on Facebook, and reach out to me with any questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. I hope you all have a fantastic night, and we'll talk to you all soon.